agree. Over the past 3 years and 9 months, the Brownback administration has set on a course to financially reward its friends and politically purge its opponents. I believe this is a self-destructive course that labels itself Roadmap Solutions. In recent weeks, a few things have become abundantly clear. David Kinzinger, longtime advisor to Sam Brownback and current target of an FBI investigation, is still intimately involved in the Brownback re-election campaign. He has been trying to keep a low profile, but with Sam Brownback running the state into the ground, cutting our schools, and behind in the polls, David Kinzinger is most certainly playing a key role in the governor's political operation. He's been spotted at Brownback's side numerous times recently, at Oklahoma Joe's with the governor and Chris Christie in August, and backstage at the state fair debate in September. According to the New York Times, Kinzinger even represented Kansas at the American Governors Association policy events as late as this July. And not surprisingly, a few weeks after that, the RGA began running attack ads against Sam Brownback's opponent, Paul Davis. David Kinzinger continues to run the governor's 501c4 organization, known as Roadmap Solutions. He was in charge of running ads earlier this year on Brownback's behalf, and he is still listed as president of Roadmap Solutions. Not to mention that Sam Brownback is still listed as a client of Kinzinger's lobbying group, Parallel Strategies, on their website. This is the same company that is the target of the FBI investigation into pay-to-play schemes in dealing with state contracts. The Brownback campaign claims that Kinzinger is just an unofficial, unpaid advisor to their campaign. Yet his sister, Tricia Kinzinger Rice, is getting paid $4,000 each month by the Brownback campaign. That raises legitimate questions about who is actually being compensated and for what services. And finally, Kinzinger is back to his dirty tricks. We've already seen the results of these questionable tactics. Tim Keck, the supposed chief of staff to Lieutenant Governor Collier, was found to have been involved in digging up the 16-year-old non-story out of Coffeyville. This raises numerous questions, including whether the governor is using taxpayer money to fund his opposition research. And let me provide to you some information that we've received from legislative research. Mr. Keck's annual salary is $100,000. 33% of that is paid by KDHE through the State General Fund. 62% of that is paid by the KDHE Special Revenue Fund, and only 5% of Mr. Keck's salary is actually paid out of the State General Fund through the Lieutenant Governor's budget, which clearly indicates to me that Mr. Keck is working for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment and is not officially on any sort of payroll that would be protected by an ethics law that says executive branch employees can be involved in political campaigns. So he should have never, in my opinion, been assigned responsibility for an open records request for the purposes of playing dirty politics. What is truly astonishing to me is that even after the existence of an FBI investigation was known, Sam Brownback still allows David Kinzinger to serve both as a campaign advisor and as the president of his PAC, Roadmap Solutions. It's long past time for the governor to announce that David Kinzinger will no longer play a role in his campaign or his PAC. Kansans know that a sitting governor shouldn't be relying on an advisor who is under FBI investigation for abusing his power, influence peddling, and awarding state contracts to campaign supporters. It is time for Sam Brownback to disassociate himself from the kind of scurrilous campaign David Kinzinger is known for running once and for all. And I'm going to answer questions after Senator Kelsey makes his statement. Senator Kelsey.
Thank you, Senator Hensley. I know some of you didn't think you would be seeing this bad penny turn up again around the Capitol, and I did want to let you know that some of you who have run out of ink with your pens, I actually have some pens for you that are still left over from previous years. And I know a lot of you have my pens, or did have. I'm participating in this news conference today because, frankly, it breaks my heart to see what the current administration has done in Kansas. When I helped elect Sam Brownback 4 years ago, I was confident that he would put our state on the right track and do it with integrity. Sadly, this has not been the case. The governor brought into the administration a number of Washington hands who thought that government and politics in Kansas should be run like they do in Washington. His chief of staff, David Kinzinger, was particularly heavy-handed in dealing with people and ramming through policies that were not in the best interest of the people of Kansas. KanCare is just one example. The Senate Health Committee, on which I served, repeatedly raised questions and concerns, and some of you remember this because you were there, about the way KanCare was being developed and how the contracts were being awarded. We were never told who actually made these decisions. Couldn't get names. These are the very things that the FBI is investigating. There are numerous answers. Kansas deserved to know. Like, did any members of the Brownback administration receive consulting fees from companies receiving KanCare contracts? Or is the Brownback campaign paying Kinzinger for his advising? Is he running their campaign? It's bad enough that David Kinzinger and the Brownback administration have been implicated by this FBI investigation. It is worse that even under the FBI investigation, Governor Brownback still allows David Kinzinger to wield influence in his campaign and administration. I learned 2 years ago about Sam Brownback and David Kinzinger's Washington-style politics. Say anything, do anything, destroy any person to further your own agenda. With Governor Brownback's approval, they attacked me and many other senators and House members who would not rubber stamp their terrible plans for Kansas. And right this second, I'm going to divert from the printed remarks and give you out one more sheet, because it just so happens in August, I received this letter at my home. And it was fascinating because, frankly, I'm not running for anything. I don't have any dog in these fights, except that I have kids in the state and I want to make a difference. But I just thought it was fascinating that I got this out of the blue. It came from the Kansas City postmark, and it did not have a name on it. The person would not sign it. But I can verify that I got it and that it came to my house. And I can also verify that one of your reporters here from this area told me about it 2 years ago. In other words, I knew it went on because the Brownback people, somebody was on their payroll, actually gave to a reporter from this Capitol, I'm not going to name the person, a packet about 2 inches thick of all this research. And they wanted that reporter to run a couple nasty stories about me and kept pressing them to do it. But frankly, there was no there. So they didn't run any stories. And so they just made up all this stuff 13 days before that election. I had a 20-point lead in the scientific poll. Spent $200,000 on negative ads, all just lies, distortions, and so forth. And I hope that the people here in Kansas are aware of these tactics, and that's one reason I'm participating in this news conference, that they realize that when the mud comes out, that they got to forget it and decide what's best for Kansas and vote accordingly. And just to finish my prepared remarks here, and then I will stand for questions along with Senator Hensley, Kansas need to be aware they will try the same things on Paul Davis, and we've already seen it. I worked with Paul when he was a member of the House. He was always honest with me. We often did not vote alike, but we worked together well. And this is the way it should be. This is what we need. People of differing opinions, able to sit down, talk it out, work something out that's best for the people. I believe Paul Davis will be a good common sense leader who will restore balance to Kansas government, and we need this balance. He will listen to all sides of the issues and do the right thing. He will staff the administration with solid, trusted Kansans who know our state and will do what is right for our state. This is why I'm supporting the election of Paul Davis for governor this year. And we'll take questions.
How do you all know that, I mean, I know there were reports that all of us in this room wrote, but how did you all know that there's an FBI investigation? Do you know independently that there's an FBI investigation? And if so, how do you know? And how do you know it's still ongoing, that it's not over?
Go ahead.
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have been accused by the Brownback people of the one who, quote, started the investigation. That somehow I tipped the FBI off on something. That's not the case. The FBI called me, and they wanted to talk to me, and did a number of times, and along with a in-person 2-hour interview. The investigation is very real. It's ongoing, and I don't believe, personally, this is my own opinion, I don't think anything will happen until after the election, because they're not trying to do it political. It's not a political thing with them at all. This thing has to do with they do not want government that is corrupt. And there are some things that are seriously wrong with what went on in the last couple of years, a few years ago, here in Kansas, and how the government was run.
Well, what were they, first of all, talk about the time frame in which they talked to you. When did they start? How many times? When did they end? And what did they ask you about specifically?
Obviously, I can't give specific questions because I can't violate their confidence of our discussion. They initially called me in March, and we talked over the next number of months, and I have not spoken to them recently. I do not know the status of the investigation, but I'm quite confident that it is not finished.
Can you give us an idea of when the last time you had contact was? About
3 months ago.
3 months ago.
And they're not calling me and consulting. You know, they're just asking questions about, basically, they're trying to figure out, how does the government work? How did things actually work?
But did they mention Mr. Kinzinger by name?
Yes,
And he seemed to be the center of the investigation,
yes,
but you can't say more than that.
not really.
And you blame Kinzinger specifically for the attacks that were run on you?
No question whatsoever. I was his number one target because I would not conform to everything the administration wanted, and I would challenge things when I saw that I believed they were wrong, such as the destruction of JJA, such as the way kids' programs are being handled, and a lot of other issues, because I knew what I was talking about.
Senator Kelsey was an outspoken criticism on the administration's policy with regard to CanCare, and that's why I believe he was targeted in the 2012 primaries. He was willing to speak out and speak out honestly, and he got punished for being honest.
Senator Hensley, have you had any contact with the FBI?
I have not.
You know you've seen the stories about the strip club thing. What's your sense of that and how it should be woven into the campaign?
Are you asking him or me?
Anybody with a good answer?
Well, it might be a good question to ask me because, frankly, as most of you know, I was a preacher. I still preach. I preach most Sundays. And so I have a little background. I've never stepped foot in any of those doors. I was always for the bills that would restrict different kind of that industry and so forth and so on. And I believe it's a total non-issue. Number one, it was 16 years ago. Number two, his attorney boss took him there. Number three, he was single. And number four, he wasn't charged with anything. So you talk about there's no there there. There's no there there. And I happen to know that Paul Davis is one of the cleanest, squeakiest clean thing. One of the comments in one of the papers on this was really cool. At least we finally got something so we don't think Paul Davis is too squeaky clean to be governor. And, so no, that's my answer.
Senator Hensley, how do you think this personal stuff works into the campaign in the voters' minds? If Davis was previously divorced, if he was at a strip club, what about Brownback's marital relationships? Are these relevant to the campaign?
I don't believe they're relevant. I think they're a distraction from the real issues in the campaign. And I think it's interesting to note that right now on television, simultaneously, are two ads running, one from the RGA about the strip club incident, the other from the Paul Davis campaign that's talking about Sam Brownback's record as governor. To me, that's a real contrast as the kind of campaigns that are being conducted by these gubernatorial candidates. I think Paul Davis's campaign is really focused on the issues, whereas I think Sam Brownback's campaign would distract people from those issues because they have nothing else to run on. They have an abysmal record as it relates to what benefits the people of Kansas. The other thing that I'll say is that it's my understanding that, again, one David Kinzinger has basically put out that he would pay a monetary reward to anyone that would come forward with any dirt on Paul Davis. You might call that a bounty or whatever, however you want to phrase it. And I think that's just one more example of the kind of despicable campaign that David Kinzinger wants to run. I can't prove it. I can't prove it, but I can tell you that I've been told that that's what's been done.
But to follow that line of questioning, who told you that? Is it somebody with direct knowledge?
I'm kind of like a member of the news media. I can't divulge my sources in this case, but I have been told that, I can tell you.
Well,
Which tactic do you think is going to work? I mean, if you have a clear tactic, one is to track things and one to talk about issues against, what makes you think either tactic, which tactic is going to work?
I think focusing on the real issues and talking about how Sam Brownback has cut education, how he's going to raid the highway plan very significantly if elected, I think that's the tactic that's going to work because I think the people of Kansas will be focused on the record of Sam Brownback as opposed to something that happened like 16 years ago.
well, let me ask you.
Pardon me?
Is this a good diversion for Brownback? You know this one?
It's a diversion. I don't know how good it is. I can't imagine that it'll really pay off.
It's a logical one, isn't it?
Why is it logical?
To divert attention from what you say is Brownback's horrible public policy.
Well, that's their attempt. That's definitely what they're trying to do.
Senator, you talked about the need for Brownback's people to cut their ties with Mr. Kinzinger because of his FBI investigation. The Brownback, the state GOP made exactly the same kind of argument about the actor in Mr. Davis's first ad, the guy. There was an arrest 7 or 8 years ago in Gibbs Park and all that. What would you say to, I mean, they made the same argument then. What would you say they're going to raise, if they raise that point, that he was associated with this guy?
Paul Davis disassociated himself with that particular individual. He did it immediately when he found out that what this individual's past was. And this guy's in no way connected with the Paul Davis campaign. Unlike David Kinzinger, who is directly involved in decision-making in the Brownback campaign. So I'm satisfied that Paul Davis apologized. He did exactly what the Republicans asked him to do, and that was to disassociate himself with, I believe it was Mr. Montague is who we're talking about. And as I say, he was merely an actor in a TV ad as opposed to being, employed by the campaign itself.
So what would you say to
Yes, sir.
people who, I mean, they're gonna look at this press conference today and say that what you guys are doing is no different from what you're criticizing? That you're criticizing, criticizing them for pushing certain issues, and then you're now having this press conference as a way to push David Kinzinger's name into print when we're not quite certain yet whether an indictment will come down, if it ever will come down. I mean, do you have any response to that?
I'll let Dick respond and then I'll respond.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to take anything away from Senator Hensley, because when he spoke on the floor, I just stayed in my seat and I didn't do nothing. But that's a good question, and I think the catch is, and the reason, in my view, and the reason I agreed to do this news conference and traveled a good distance to do it, the fact is that the people of Kansas need to be aware and need to be cognizant as they consider who they're voting for about what the operation of the Brownback campaign is all about, how they do business, how the state's been run. All of these things are very relevant to whether we want 4 more years of this. If we want a government by intimidation for another 4 years, I don't think so. And so to me, there's no similarity between this ad flub up by some staff person and what we're trying to do here today.
What could the governor do?